So anyhow, I'd like to welcome Neil Oldridge. Thank you for coming. This is part of our ACSM's Distinguished Leaders in Sports Medicine and Exercise Science series. And we're talking to, I think you're about our 40th person, Neil, that we've talked to.
Do that many distinguished?
Well, we have to change the definition. The first 20 were distinguished.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now we're scraping.
Scraping, yeah, good. So, and I'm 40th.
See,
That's
you started
grand.
it. You shouldn't have done it. So anyhow, you're retired, you said, and I just wondered, what are you up to now? And then from there, I just wanted to go back a little bit to your undergrad days, and everybody I've talked to have been athletes and played sports and had been interested, and I didn't know if that was true. I think it probably was for you, but what are you up to now since you retired?
Yeah. Thank you, Jack. It's a pleasure to come and share some reflections and reminiscences. I'm now with a large healthcare group in the southeast Wisconsin. They have a cardiology fellowship program, which has about 24 fellows in the program, and my responsibilities are to mentor the fellows in their research projects.
Oh, that'd be fun.
They have to do, as part of their fellowship program, they have to do a research project. And the clinicians are busier than all get out. And they don't have training in research methodology. I was fortunate enough walking through the hospital to bump into who is now a senior interventional cardiologist, but I helped him write his first abstract back in 1985.
Wow.
And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well," and he said, "Do you want to join us?" That was it.
Isn't that
That's
something?
superb.
Wow.
It's a lot of fun. The fellows are, some of them are directly out of their residency programs. Some of them have coming back after, maybe 5-8 years in clinical practice. They're all smart. The majority of them don't want to do research, so it's a little bit like trying to see whether chickens have teeth.
Yeah, is this a year program or what?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
Okay.
And then the fellows can stay an additional year or two to do a subspecialty within cardiology, interventional cardiology, electrophysiology, whatever it is. So it keeps me both involved and active, and it's fun.
That'd be challenging. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
perfect.
Enjoying it very much.
And you can call the shots. And
Well, to the degree that physicians will listen to you.
right. So let's go back and where did you grow up, and how did you get interested in where you're at now? Did you start having interests in physical activity and playing sports and so forth as a young guy, or?
Well, I was born and brought up in South Africa, and there are two things that you get involved in South Africa.
I can guess what this is going to be.
Politics and sport.
I thought one was going to be women, but
Well, no, that's universal. There are two things, politics and sport, and it was the time of when I went to high school, increasing apartheid, and as a young South African, there are a certain amount of pressure on you to do something in sports.
yes, yeah.
And
Cricket,
so,
rugby.
the sort of traditional sports,
Soccer.
cricket, rugby. No, soccer. At that time, soccer wasn't a big deal. It became a big deal maybe in the 70s. I'm talking now the late 40s, 50s. And no, cricket and rugby were the major sports that men got. It was interesting with Barbara Drinkwater's discussion today, and I don't know if I'm correct, but my recollection is that our high school girls, and even younger than that, and young women were always involved in sport.
I think it was different there. It was different in other countries, Germany as well.
Yeah, they were very much involved.
It was very different. That's correct. Yeah, yeah. And so when did you come over to the States?
I left South Africa in 1964. I taught elementary school in England for about a year. Came over to Florida, where I did my master's degree, and then was asked if I wanted to go to Wisconsin. And I said, well, I know that's pretty far north. Mm-hmm. And Hugh Welch, who some people here will remember the name, he said to me, well, all I can warn you about Wisconsin is buy some red unions. I said, what the hell are red unions? Mm-hmm. My first education into northern living.
Long underwear?
Long underwear. Yeah, Bruno Balke, Fran Nagel, Carl Stederfolk, Jerry Dempsey.
Wow, what a lineup.
It was Bill Redden.
Leonard was there too.
Leonard Larson was there, yeah.
Alan Ryan.
Alan Ryan went,
wow.
I think he came in when we were graduate students, and then he went on to Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was Wisconsin, in terms of physical education at that time, I think was one of the premier graduate programs.
Well, between Wisconsin and Illinois,
mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
there wasn't a whole lot of other ones at that level.
No, there weren't at that time.
Right.
And then Bruno Balke, in addition to his very keen interest in exercise physiology, was himself a competitor. Mm-hmm. And he was the one who was responsible initially for starting the cardiac rehabilitation program at Wisconsin, and it was started as a research project. Mm. Yeah, I when you look back at things, you sort of say, well, there's certain episodes that if they had gone differently, my life would have been different. Yeah. And for me, it was 1964. The Olympic Games were in Tokyo, and South Africa was disinvited. Mm. And if they had not been disinvited, I wouldn't have been allowed to write my final exams in 1964, because we would have had that time away from lectures. And at that time, that was a real disappointment, not being able to go to the Olympic Games. Yeah. But as I say, in reflection now, if I had gone, we wouldn't be sitting and talking.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had Balke for classes.
Yep.
Yes. So when you went there, Neil, what track were you in? Exercise physiology?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd finished the year and done my master's degree down in Florida. Mm-hmm. And as I say, they had this large grant. Penn State, Minnesota, and Wisconsin had an NHLBI grant to look at the feasibility of physical activity in middle-aged faculty men who had some risk for cardiovascular disease.
Was Buskirk in that?
Buskirk was in that at Penn State, and Taylor in Minnesota.
Right, okay.
And I actually went up to Wisconsin the first year I was there. I worked on that research project. Mm-hmm. I did some courses as well, and then I switched over to a full-time student and a full load. Yeah.
Did you get involved with the early guidelines writing and going with Bruno to Aspen?
Yes.
And was it Aspen?
Yeah, it was in Aspen. Yes, right from the word go.
I was going to say, that would have been about the time, I think.
Mm-hmm. That would have been about 72 or thereabouts when the ACSM decided that they were going to support an effort, and I don't know that they were quite sure what that effort was originally, but to try to bring some guidelines to this new area of cardiac rehabilitation to set up, and I'm not sure whether there was an intention to set up certification right from the start. I think these things sort of grow maybe a little bit like Topsy. You're not quite sure where they're going to go when you start them.
Was the American Heart Association involved in that too at that point, or?
No. I'm not. It's fascinating. Today, you go into a doctor's office, and there's a wall full of brochures about exercise. You even go into a dentist's office today, and there's some brochure about exercise. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, wow. I don't think that the American Heart Association had much interest in. And exercise testing wasn't even a routine at that time. So, no, they didn't have. And I don't think they ever really got involved with that aspect of it. They said, well, you know, you've got expertise as ACSM. You've got expertise. You run with that. You're big boys.
So I assume it was at Wisconsin that you became first introduced to the American College of Sports Medicine, or was it in Florida?
When you were a graduate student in exercise physiology, not necessarily in Leonard Larson's area, but more in the exercise physiology side, there was an expectation that you would become not only a member, but a worker for ACSM. And I remember with grad students, Jack Daniels, Glenn Porter, Ed Howley, that we all were not quite the hewers of wood and drawers of water, but very nearly.
Very, real close.
Yes, we ran the audiovisual. We made sure that people knew where they were going to. Not as it is now, everything's done on voting on the internet. Voting was done right there and then with pencil and paper. We picked the ballots up and we counted them.
Yeah.
And that was an extraordinary exposure, not only to ACSM as an entity, but to the people, the members. You had to rub shoulders. Yeah. I think my first ACSM meeting was in Albuquerque. I think there was an ACSM joint meeting in Toronto. I'm not sure if it was an ACSM, but I think there was one. Then the next one was in Albuquerque. And that was held in the Holiday Inn. They only had one session at a time. There weren't tracks.
What year was that?
Had to be 68, maybe 69, 70, somewhere in there. Yeah, somewhere in that time. And everybody stayed at the Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
So you just really couldn't help but rub shoulders with other graduate students as well as...
How exciting to be a grad student.
Extraordinary opportunity.
Seeing all these people there.
Yeah, and you get to know them.
Or whatever. And,
which you don't get today. Like this
everybody
meeting,
sort of disperses.
5,400 people.
Yeah.
I think there might have been 400 people at that meeting.
And I think at the time in Wisconsin, the ACSM national office was there.
Oh, the national office was in the stadium. Right, yeah. Bruno Balke had his biodynamics lab on one floor, which was fairly high up in the stadium, physically high up. And then above that, I think there were 3 rooms underneath the bleachers. That was the ACSM headquarters. Yeah.
Did the grad students have to work over there too?
Yes.
I mean, I know they only had like a staff and a half or something.
That's right. I think
for a while.
Yeah, I think there might have been a secretary and then 2 people. Yeah, or maybe 1 full-time and 1 part-time.
It was not very much.
No, it really wasn't. And it wasn't at all.
And I saw the early membership records, and they were basically in a shoebox, you know, with note cards.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You sort of, when you look back at that, you wonder, did all organizations start that way, just from a shoebox?
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Well, so you were president in 91, I think, around there. Did you sort of work your way? Were you on committees and the board of trustees and all that? I mean, were you pretty much involved in the college the whole way from when you went to that first meeting, or?
Yes. I think if you make a decision, you're going to commit yourself to an area that you enjoyed, that was fun, that the people were fun, that you, and it wasn't large, that you found yourself pretty quickly, if you wished to being involved in maybe a committee that really didn't have a major role in the administration, but it had a role, and it had its specific responsibility. And if you were able to demonstrate that you brought something to the table, you would be asked to go to another committee. And I think I remember one of the committees that was, I was very fortunate to have been invited to participate in, was one of the very early, what became the Strategic Planning Committee.
Oh, yes, yeah. Very important. I remember seeing their reports,
Yeah.
and they were very powerful.
Very early ones. I think, if I remember correctly, Tipton, Stadefolk, I can't remember who else, but Tipton was the chair, and we had been given directions by the board to try to come up with a 5-year plan. And I think that's sort of when I started really to get involved with college administration, trying to identify where we thought we were going, where we thought we needed to be going, where we wanted to be going.
And I remember looking at those, and the college really took it seriously, and really, I think, followed a lot of those suggestions.
Many of the suggestions. And I think, that's not to say that those ideas weren't already there, but they were scattered.
Yeah,
they
that
had
formalized it.
That's right. It formalized
Yeah.
it. There was no sort of plan. There were ideas, and we would like to do this, and wouldn't this be a good idea if we did? But as soon as we started to put down aims, goals, objectives, steps to achieving those things, there was a focus that perhaps hadn't been there before, but it was loose. It was not pulled into a light beam.
When you were president, Neil, Jim Whitehead had just been there for a year or two, right?
Yes, I think if I remember correctly, I was on that committee, search committee for an executive vice president, and I think it was Lyle McCady.
Yeah, I had just spoken to Lyle earlier, and
he was the first with Jim.
Okay.
Then Barbara Drinkwater,
I think she was.
And then myself, I think.
Yeah, because we had a little problems there pre-Jim Whitehead.
Yes, yeah.
So
I'm not exactly sure what that sequence was, but it was
that's real
Lyle,
close
I think,
to what it was. And Jim, I think, has done really a wonderful job.
He has. It's been any organization that has at least 3 different foci and then a student group on top of that who have. I must say, though, that in that whole process of 5-year plans, I think the person who probably had the most influence in formalizing those was Carl Gisolfi. I think so. Carl was never, my recollection, Carl was never somebody to sort of stand in front and say, follow me. He would make suggestions. Don't you think that would be a good idea? I'll support you if you think that And I think a lot of that, which led to the strategic planning committee and process. I think it was Carl Gisolfi's.
Oh, that's good.
I
Yeah, I
think
wasn't
so.
aware of that.
Yeah. I think if you go back and you have a look at some of those records and sort of try to follow that stream just within the within that strategic planning process, I think you'll see Carl's name coming up over and over and over again.
And what an unfortunate
Oh, yeah. Yes.
event that was
Yeah.
to lose him. Because he worked with Tip, right?
He worked extensively with Tip, and then Tip moved from Iowa down to Arizona.
Yeah.
But Carl was a true gentleman, a true gentleman, and I think today where the college is at owes considerable credit to Carl. But as I say, he was quiet, and he sort of wasn't in the front and telling people, follow me, follow me. And,
I liked what you said at the business meeting the other day, because you know, so many people get in this organization because they started as students. And
yeah, I've had a concern about that, and I didn't have the figures when I stood up
yeah,
first, and then somebody actually gave me the figures, and I knew there was something going on or not going on, but to see from a 1997 to 2009 a drop
2,000
of
or
over
something like
2,000, 2,500 out of 5,400
Yeah, yeah.
is, and this last year has seen an increase of 500. So last year it was even a bigger drop. And that's of major concern to me in an organization like this, which really requires those young people to be stimulated.
So if it were at 5,000 and we're say 20,000, so that's a quarter. What do you think it was in the 60s, Neil? Or you know, when you were started, do you think it was more or less?
No, I think it was less. I think it was less. But there weren't that many programs at that time. There were lots of physical education programs, but many of those physical education programs were education.
Right.
Rather than what has now become exercise science and its affiliates.
So if you didn't have the educational goal, or you know, those people were joining AFER
That's
or
right.
whatever.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah, I see what you're
precisely.
saying. Yeah.
So I think that the pool was smaller. A percent, and obviously numbers, it was much smaller.
Oh, sure.
I would not be sure of what the proportion, the percentage was, but I'd be very surprised if it was a quarter. I really would be surprised.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. That may be one way to look at it, that, you know, percentage-wise versus
We have
numbers.
increased. There's absolutely no doubt about that,
Yeah.
percentage-wise. I'm quite sure that you're correct. But it's the present concern rather than the past.
Exactly, yeah.
It's why have we... I don't know. People have made comment to me in the last day or so about that question. And there appears that there are a lot of exercise science programs, which would suggest that there are a lot of potential student members.
Yeah.
Why are we losing them? I mean, I was surprised, and I was pleased by Jim Whitehead's response to the comment about no longer certifying exercise physiology programs.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that.
I hadn't heard of it at all.
Yeah, I don't.
And I hope that's wrong.
I don't think it's a good idea.
No.
Either.
I mean, that's our lifeblood.
People spoke about it too.
Sure. That's our lifeblood in the university.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's very different than the American Heart Association or the American College of Cardiology or diabetes. It's different, and it is a grassroots organization.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to figure out who came up with that idea and you know, what the rationale was.
Why? Yes, because it's just, to me, a wrong direction.
Yeah.
That's not in our strategic plan, I hope.
Right. Well, Neil, I appreciate you coming.
Great
and,
pleasure,
and,
Jack.
And talking.
Yep.
It's been fun. 30 minutes just goes.
It does. Is that 30 minutes?